Hui. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this meeting. Just a reminder that this meeting is being live streamed, Zoomed. So if you do speak, there is just a little button on the right-hand side of this, if you could turn that on until your light comes on. But otherwise, just let me know if you do wish to speak. I will start this meeting with a brief karakia. Tūtawa mai runga, tūtawa mai raro, tūtawa mai roto, tūtawa mai waho. Kia tau wai, te mauri tū, te mauri ora, ki te katoa, haumie, huie, tai here. Thank you. And it's just a blessing to someone from above, below, within, without, all of the good things in the world to bless us all today. So it is fantastic to have a couple of presenters joining us this morning. Also just a reminder to everyone to please make sure that your phones are on silent. I'll call for apologies first. I've got an apology received from Chairman Leader and also Fiona, and thank you to Namuta, who is joining us on their behalf, and also Deputy Chair Jane Nees. It's great to have you here. Are there any further apologies today? David?
One from Stace Lua.
Thank you very much. So we'll take those apologies. Can I please have a mover and a seconder to accept those? Mayor Tūnui and also Mayor Denia. All those in favour, please say aye. Any against? That's carried. Thank you. Any late items for today? No, but we may just have a brief discussion around the pyrolysis of ties. Would you like to do that at the end? Maybe? Yeah, okay, we'll include that at the end of our agenda. Just, we have had discussions on that in the past, so just an update to check where we're at. We welcome Taupo, who are joining us by Zoom. Good morning. And next item is, well, there's no public excluded business to be transferred, so we'll go straight to the minutes. This is of our previous meeting on the 3rd of May, which is page 7 of our agenda. Are there any amendments or matters arising from that? Nope, so we'll take a mover and a seconder to confirm they're true and correct. That's moved by Mayor Denia. Happy to second myself. All those in favour, please say aye. Thank you. So our first presentation today is quite an exciting one. We are welcoming our newest mayor to the table and our newest mayor in the Bay of Plenty region. So a very warm welcome to Mahe Drysdale. It's fantastic to have you join what is a very passionate and hard-working region of mayors and chief executives. And of course, we followed that election very closely, as did the rest of the country. So we're very familiar with your background. We look forward to the experience and the passion that you have, and also your skills in building teams and representing others. So it can be a very challenging space as a mayor, but we have no doubt that you will do an excellent job there, and also you will be well supported if you ever wish. So welcome to the Bay of Plenty Mayoral Forum, and we'd just like to hand over to you if you want to make a few remarks at your first meeting as the Mayor of Tauranga City.
Kia ora, and thank you for having me. It's good to join the regional mayors and CEs, and I think very much in my priorities is that collaborative sort of environment where we can share and learn from each other. Thank you to everyone that's reached out to me. It's been feel very supportive very early on in the role. Very much a focus in our council of sort of really building that team because we believe that together we can achieve a lot more, and obviously that applies to the wider region as well. So very busy few weeks as we try to get up to speed with everything, but I think we've got some really exciting opportunities in Tauranga and in the wider region to lead the country in a number of ways. So that's sort of the priority and the focus over the next few weeks of really getting into it and getting stuff done, and look forward to working with you all as we go. So thank you.
Thank you very much, and we look forward to supporting you as we all try to get stuff done for the Bay of Plenty region too. So a big congratulations to yourself and to your new council, of course, as well. So we'll now move to our first presentation, which is the United Nations Decade for Healthy Ageing, Following that, we will have Positive Money NZ, and then I will provide a brief update on youth councils in the region before we go into public excluded section. So I'd like to invite Carol. So Carol Gordon, welcome to the presenters table. And Carol is the Strategic Advisor to Aotearoa New Zealand UN Decade of Healthy Ageing Forum. And we will have a presentation for you as well. And there is a clicker just in front of you as well. So we're going to have 25 minutes for this, including questions and answers. And so it's a pleasure to hand over to you, Carol. Thank you very much for joining us this morning.
Yes. I'm delighted to share with you the kind of trajectory of how our population framework is progressing in the Bay. And so I thank you very much indeed for the opportunity. As a social and political gerontologist, my focus is more on the political frameworks that support and shape our culture, as well as who we are. So bringing older people to the fore is an agenda that I've worked on for many years, both with smart growth and with various councils and other bodies. So I've had relationships with many of you through smart growth over a long period of time. So today I'm presenting primarily from the scope of the UN Decade of Healthy Ageing, because populations are changing all over the world. So you'll see that in a map at the moment. So today I'm really doing a call to progress. We've talked about ageing populations forever, for a long time, but what does it really mean, and how does it impact the social structure of our communities, and how does it impact our economy, and how can we mobilise that strength and wisdom and also the financial capacity of a wealthy generation at present. So we've got unprecedented demographic change across the whole world. More people are living longer. We've not only got a reduction in the birth rate, but more people living longer. And that's the focus that we need to address in our region. We need to act with informed understanding, but today I really want to motivate you to urgency. Do you know the baby boomers reach 80, not next year, but the year after? And there's 20 years more of them living longer. And many of them will live to 100 years old. So we need to mainstream population ageing impact in all of our policy frameworks. Not just say to the community team, oh, fix up the relationships with the old people, be nice to them. Oh no, all of our policies. So the fun facts are, as I've just said, that our people are living longer lives, but the cost of inaction is huge. If we don't keep them healthy and well and enable them to be self-determining, we create dependency and cost. I was just saying to James in a moment ago, it's a big challenge for local government to actually collaborate with the health system. I know the health system in a mess. It's hard enough for me to communicate. It's very puzzling and very complex, but we really should hold hands. You've got a well-being priority in the Local Government Act. For goodness sake, start talking to the health system, because it's our health system and our communities that are going to be unwell if you don't do your things. So we need to ensure that there's innovation around this. It's not business as usual. It is absolutely not. And much of the change will be dependent on what elders can do for themselves. So longevity is a new horizon. Put it in your language. Stop talking about ageing. Age and ageing are all words that everybody's heard and nobody cares. Shift the narrative is the big opportunity. So You know, at the end of the day, everybody wakes up older. It's not just about old people, it's about all of us in our life trajectory. So aging is happening from the time we're born. It's not just about old people. So here is a very important map. It shows the global population at the top at 2023. This comes from the World Economic Forum. And you can see the orange is the super aging, the yellowy orange, and then the next gradient is pale green, and then it goes to darker green and down through the blues. So you will see that Japan is highlighted in the top, and you will see that USA is in the pale blue, even though they do a lot more about the shift, the demographic shift than we do. But I want to focus on China and Southeast Asia, that are our closest trading partners, and Europe. So you'll see that Europe is in the pale green. But if you come down to 2050, you'll see the remarkable shift of all of Europe being in the orange, along with the greater parts of Asia. That has significance for us, high significance. Not only have we the opportunity for products to that area that's specific for older people, but it tells you all about the workforce, and there's a lot of analysis that I could do that I haven't got time to today, but just to alert you to the significance of what is happening globally. But this is the most important slide I'm going to show you, other than your map related to your district. This slide is so important. So it starts at 2018 on the left and moves over to 2073. Now this is the trajectory of the New Zealand population. So the bottom line is the ageing of people over 65, and the blue line is the decline of children, 0 to 14. Then you've got the workforce on the other two lines of the yellow and the red. And you can see that there is no growth. There's a growth only in the 65 plus line. It's incredibly important. You're doing long-term plans that span the next phase of that. If you look at where the older people and the children intersect, that's in New Zealand, that's 2028. So that's the shift in the dependency ratio. I could spend a lot of time talking to this. I wish I had the time. But I just want to alert you to the long-term picture of New Zealand itself. So we have population ageing, which is more elders than children. But we also have, in particular to our region, a demographic dichotomy, that we have a growing number of young Maori and a growing number of elders that we need to be specific for in our planning scope. Older people are the growing resource. They're 75% of Tauranga City's growth. Remember that. 75% of the growth of the population in Tauranga City are people over 75. And we then ask ourselves, how are they considered in the building programs of smart growth? How are they considered in transport planning? And the transport people know that Glenn knows, other people know that I go on and continue to contribute to that story. We have to make changes because we can't afford for them not to be well. So let's just quickly look at structural and individual. When we talk about the ageing of society, we're talking about a structural change like we saw in that map, but we've also got a role to enable elders or people of all ages to manage and their own well-being, and that has resulted in increasing longevity. It's because we've got a well nation that people are living longer, but there's some people we need to help lift up. So we'll have 1 million people in New Zealand by 2028. That was the crossover, the dependency ratio I showed you. 80 people a day. 80 people a day, reaching 75. That's the baby entail of the baby boomers and the rest. So there's a National Forum for Healthy Ageing under the umbrella of the UN Decade that is formed here in New Zealand. And the decade has this wonderful symbol that has elders at the centre. And then each of those rings, it's very clever, each of those 4 rings are the key goals for the decade. Then the spaces in between are the enablers, the what to do to help it all to happen. It's really rather lovely. So combating ageism is at the top of the list. Age-friendly environments, which you know about. People can't stay well if they can't get out and about safely and live in houses that support them to be warm and well. And we've got a whole issue in New Zealand around integrated healthcare and long-term care. And if you haven't done it, submissions go to the Select Committee by Monday. Just as an aside. So locally, we've got a Decade Committee, Tauawhi Kamatua Tauranga Decade Forum, and that was established by the National Council of Women with other agencies in collaboration with the Western Bay PHO and Te Whatu Ora, and we've got lots of things happening, and the response by community groups has been marvellous. Number of research projects underway. So that's the spaces. How will we do the decade theme action? I'm going to jump over it other than to focus on 3, which is your role in terms of leadership that I'm here about today. Something has to change. You have to decide within your plans what you will adapt, and I'm going to come to that. We need to change the conversation, and we need to be genuine in our relationships with elders. When you're planning changes in communities and deciding what to do, ask the people. Ask Lucy. She's not very happy. She wants to know what's going on and how it affects her. And she's got a lot of wisdom to share. She's got a lot of little local ideas. She knows all about it. Don't forget she knows. We've got an elder housing and elder crisis. How are we talking about that? How are we getting together? Kaingoa is doing its thing. We've got social housing providers, and how is it all knitting? And how are we participating in the health system reform? How can we collaborate to achieve community wellbeing? So I want to now quickly run through your maps. This is the Bay of Plenty region, and so the similar format of the New Zealand structural diagram, but the colours all change, I'm sorry, so you do have to look closely. So the yellow line here, of course, is the ageing population, and the bottom line is the stability, no growth of birth of children. Let's acknowledge that that line is only stable because we have a Maori birth rate and an Indian birth rate. So when we see those lines not moving, it is being held stable by the Maori birth rate. So we've got slight growth in the workforce, but that will move over into the yellow line over time. So Tauranga City, with its high ageing component, and once again, not much change in the future growth because of the birth rate. Slight growth, well, no, significant growth in the workforce. So one of the points that I'm really, really on about, because those slides were 65 plus, and I rail against lumping and homogenising older people into a lump called 65 plus or the elderly. Those are no-no things. So we must shift that, even that initial phrase to say 65 to 100 plus years. Don't stop at 65. But when we disaggregate the data into the age groups, we see all those people who are really there. And in this one, we see the young Maori that we didn't see on the straight line. We wouldn't have known that, though, that was the case, that was a high Maori birth. You know it, but I'm just illustrating the fact that disaggregating data is really important. And so in Tauranga City, for example, in the last census, we had over 1,000 people over 90 and over 100. And looking forward in your long-term plan phase, you're going to have 2,048. That's just in that one age group as an indicator of longevity. So as I said before, 70% of population growth is estimated to be over 75, but also 3,000 women who over 75 who live alone. We need to see them and know them and love them. We've got to care more. So here's Western Bay. It's the standout in the crowd. Whew. No growth, just old people. And you know that. But it's interesting for everyone to see the contrasts of the differences across our bay. And so when we disaggregate that, we can see, for goodness sake, how many people over 80 that we didn't see if it was just a 65 plus homogenising of all the people. I like that term. Wow, we wouldn't have known. And all those people over 90. Wow. So here is Whakatane. And unfortunately, you can see the decline in the young people and the decline in the next set of young people, 15 to 30. Significant ageing climate. Potiki, more dip. And these declines, of course, were identified by Natalie Jackson earlier, but what I'm doing here is really illustrating in your planning phase. This is your planning environment. This is who you are planning for right now. And if it isn't accommodated, you need to adapt. This is your 10-year plan. Rotorua? Is anyone from Rotorua here today? Hello. Oh, yes, of course, Mayor. And Mayoral. Mayoral does good things. And so it's very revealing when we look at the trajectory, and not just percentages and not just numbers. When we put people to the story and disaggregate the data, we're going to understand more. So just some entertainment, one birth every 9 minutes at this point of time, and one death every 13, and one person migrating. We've got 32,000 people living in retirement villages, and we've got 38 villages in the Bay of Plenty. Yep. And the number's over 100, because we're living longer. A lot more women than men. Reaching 6,300 in 2050. Amazing. So what next? Let's plan and action a new paradigm where we need to change. We need to adapt what we're doing. Doesn't need a big revolution, just look and do the critical analysis that says, what does this mean? where sustainability matters, where longevity drives new opportunity. And that's another whole story to talk about, where co-design, working with the elders, will bring efficiencies. You won't have them complaining about things not being right if you work with them at the beginning. Where social connectedness overcomes social isolation because we've planned our neighbourhoods well. Where no one will be left behind, as you know, is one of the major sustainability goals. But so how do we achieve healthy longevity? It's a cross-sector approach. As I said, we've got to work with the health systems and the various service-related offerings that can be connected well in neighbourhoods. Some of you have heard me talk about the hyperlocal community. But older people must be central in designing the systems because we've never had this many before. We've never had people living this long. It's a whole new world. So it must be anchored in a community level. One of the key things of the decade is to deal with ageism. And it's a whole topic, and I hope that you will challenge your staff and your team leaders to start doing some work with your staff on ageism, because it sits with us first, and then it rolls out into the work that we do. But it's incredibly important, and you can look at my website there that I've created around ageism, Framing Longevity, because it leads into a toolkit specially designed for local government. Here is the hyper-local community, your neighbourhood planning so that people can access, and then that's a very sustainable model because we can link transport systems and service delivery into an accessible neighbourhood ecosystem. We don't have to have people travelling all over the city, all over the town to reach their basic needs. A very, very important and helpful approach to enabling older people to be well. I'm sorry I'm taking a minute longer. I won't be very long.
Okay, there is 5 minutes remaining, but that includes questions, so it's up to you, yes.
Oh, good.
If you want any questions, leave some time, but otherwise go ahead.
Thank you. So one of the really important issues isn't just about older people being happy there and walking the dog out in your neighbourhoods. It's about our economy and their contribution. The World Economic Forum does a huge amount of work on the silver economy. And Jane, you'll remember Smart Growth, and I organised a silver economy symposium some years ago in Namuta. And it's a very significant thing because the more you develop products and services for older people, the more that they're contributing to the wealth of the district as well as their own well-being. So it has a circular movement. And today they're actually calling it the longevity economy. America and Europe are well versed in silver economy strategies. In fact, there's a big conference in a week's time, World Conference, and they hold them regularly. But we don't even have a narrative for that. We haven't started to explore what the wealth, and I'm not talking just money, the wealth of our elders are. Maori know, but many of us don't have a conceptual framework that embraces and respects this aspect of our work. There's also another title called the longevity dividend, which is the social outcome from integrating elders into the social and economic life of our communities. So it's what we call, we don't call it the social compact, we call it the social, word meaning that, can't think of what it is right now. But it means that the more we share, the more it goes around and the more it is for our good. And so healthy longevity is for all of our good because our elders aren't costing us in labour and love and time and costly care systems. But they also have capital, and so we're also enhancing the generational link between generations so that everybody then is staying well. So the longevity dividend is discussed a lot in international circles. So right now, you're framing the future that we choose. You are. You're framing our future and the future of generations. So it will need all of us to act to embrace the challenges of an ageing population. So I've shared with you the booklet from the UN, and it's got the four themes there. So you've got a point of reference in terms of coming back to your policy frames and asking the questions, how are we addressing this and what do we need to change in what we're doing? So it's your leadership. You can mobilise a platform of change in your own organisation and together. And so it's a new narrative and a new recognition of that trajectory that we're on. It's not about percentages, because it adds people up and makes them all the same. Funny that. I call it homogenising. So let's look at what we're already doing and what we can change and adapt within the frameworks that we've got. Develop a new narrative. Unpack the data. Start using language that honours older people. Look at your hyperlocal community planning and foster lifelong learning. Do you know lifelong learning's fallen off the agenda of our nation? You know that. Our tertiary system's in a mess and people don't have the opportunities to retrain for jobs for a longer life. Everybody wants a new job at 40 or 50. And so we've got a lot of work to do. We've invested in a university and it's training, and the polytech system is training young school leavers, but they're not training women of 40 and 50 who need to earn for the rest of their life. Deal to ageism and model the value for elders. Please model the value. And I suggest that you have a management team workshop about systems and what the impact of the population profile of your towns and your communities, because within them, like Western Bay has Katikati and Mayoral. So I want to leave you with that slide as a challenge to action. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Carol, for your detailed presentation to us this morning. I've just checked in. A copy of the presentations will be sent to all of the members present today, and I do note that your contact details are on that last slide. But look, can I thank you very much, Carol, for the work and effort that you obviously put into this area and the advocacy that you provide to all outer persons in the community. We've definitely appreciated your presentation today.
Thank you.
Thank you, Carol. So we'll now move to our next presentation, and I'll invite Mayor Luca to introduce Positive Money New Zealand.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. We have here today two gentlemen, Martin Taylor and Cliff Hall. Cliff is of Canadian origin, but he's been living in New Zealand for 30 years, so he's a New Zealander. They represent positive money. I'm going to make an outlandish statement. All money in our present day system of money, our fiat system of money, is created from thin air. It's created by governments, directly or indirectly. The Reserve Bank creates money. Treasury creates those printed bills with the pretty colours that we see. And commercial banks create money every time they make a loan. That's how money is created on behalf of all of us. But it's not distributed very equally and not necessarily for the right things. Before COVID, the Reserve Bank issued $70 billion of new money using a technique called quantitative easing or large-scale asset purchases. Those assets are pieces of paper. Most of that money went into inflating a real estate bubble. Hardly any of it went to creating new infrastructure. Positive Money's been working in this space for quite a while. They understand what money is. There's plenty of books around that explain the system. I know it sounds bizarre, but that is the way it is. Magic. We do magic and we turn it into things. So thank you, gentlemen. Go ahead.
Good morning. Thank you, Victor. Good morning, Chairperson, mayors, councillors, and members of the public. Thank you for inviting us today to speak to you. My name is Cliff Hall. Beside me here is my colleague, Martin Taylor. We're from Positive Money, as Victor mentions, and we're an advocacy group that's committed to a fair financial system for everyone. We think we have an idea for you. I'll be speaking for about 8 minutes, and I understand I have 20 minutes, so we'll leave 12 minutes at the end for questions. We have 3 big concerns about our water infrastructure. First, we are concerned about the financial burden that new water services and existing infrastructure, repairs and upgrades to it, we're concerned about the financial burden that that's placing on councils. Second, we want to make sure that water assets and the control of water assets, ownership and control stays within local ownership and under democratic control. Third, we want to make sure that councils and communities are able to plan, develop, and finance their vital water infrastructure. We don't want it to be affected by 3-year political cycles. It needs to be sustainable and continuous. We imagine that the government's announcement last week, increasing borrowing limits by up to 500%, was welcome. However, even if you borrow more, you still have to be able to make the payments. You still have to be able to afford it. Would you be interested in new financing? New funding at an interest rate as low as 1%. The solution we are presenting today will achieve the requirements of local water done well without unaffordable debt. We propose that 2 trusted existing independent entities, the Infrastructure Commission and the Reserve Bank, be used. These independent entities will work directly with councils on planning, funding, and oversight. Parliament will have a high-level role, and we'll come to that in a minute. In regard to financing, in a nutshell, our own Reserve Bank will lend the money for the project. This means that the local government funding agency will have a reliable source of inexpensive public funding. I'll now go through the mechanics and explain how it works. I'm going to see if I can use my pointer, and I'll point on this screen. I'm sorry for the people faced here. I don't think my pointer is going to reach that far. It's all right, I'll talk to it. There it is. I'm going to start at the bottom left in the green box, number 1. Councils would decide their own needs and submit water infrastructure projects to the Infrastructure Commission. The next in number 2, the Infrastructure Commission would review these projects, bundle them up, and submit a 10-year water infrastructure plan along with funding needs to Parliament. Then in number 3, at the top, Parliament would accept or modify the funding amount and authorize a 10-year facility with the Reserve Bank to buy water bonds up to a limit, say $20 billion. Now, we would expect quite a lot of scrutiny from Parliament the first time that is done. But later we would expect it to be almost like a rubber stamp. Next, in step 4, the LGFA issues very low interest water bonds for the approved finance amount And in number 5, the Reserve Bank buys those bonds. That's basically the process. Terms and timing will be set in consultation with the Reserve Bank based on previous uses of Reserve Bank direct monetary financing. We expect that the interest rate will be less than half the current wholesale rate. Financing is ring-fenced to specific water projects, and unlike traditional government bonds, repayments will come from councils and not taxpayers. Councils would repay their portion of the funding plus interest over the term of the bond. We'd expect some long-term bonds with maturities of 10 to 30 years. Combined with lower interest rates, this means that there'll be lower debt servicing costs that will reduce water charges. Councils and CCOs would retain the ability to raise finance from other sources to top up the funding or to fund rejected projects. I'd like to talk a little bit about the benefits of this model. One main benefit, number one, it reduces the cash flow burden on councils and takes pressure off of rates and water charges. If you look at the top highlighted item, you can see that the interest rate is much less than what councils are currently paying. We did a sample calculation and ran it not at the lowest rate of 1%, but we ran it at 2% on a $50 million loan. The lower interest rate and longer terms cut monthly repayments by 2/3. If you look at the fourth line down, you can see that the monthly repayments went from $530,000 to $183,000. Saved a lot of money. Second benefit, it allows council to determine what infrastructure they need with as little involvement from central government as possible. 3, it provides long-term certainty of projects and funding. A reliable pipeline of work will allow infrastructure providers to invest in people and equipment. Number 4, it retains ownership and control of water assets. And 5, a bonus. The interest payments will stay within New Zealand, not be sent overseas, and they'll stay in the New Zealand economy. So in conclusion, we believe that using public money is the best way to fund public infrastructure. This proposal is an opportunity just waiting to be grabbed. When you talk to the government about it, and we hope you do because we need your support to make it happen, beware. You're going to get some pushback. But know that there are solid arguments and history behind it. And we believe that the framework proposed here will address the most common objections. So continue to push. Note that New Zealand has used public money successfully before. For a period of 50 years, it was used by governments of the left and right. For instance, from the 1930s, the Reserve Bank funded the building of thousands of state houses. And right up until the 1980s, the Reserve Bank provided 1% finance to the Dairy Board for the development of the dairy industry. What is new in our proposal is that we're setting up an institutional framework so that we can use this funding source again, ongoing, across political cycles. Key to this is a governance structure that addresses the concerns such as inflation, project delivery, political and default risks. We're confident that it can work, especially if councils and communities take ownership of the idea. Thank you. Are there any questions?
Thank you very much, Martin and Cliff. Mayor Luca.
Well, thank you, gentlemen, for bringing some creativity to the table. I mean, we've spent 4 years around this table talking about how to finance water and sustainability of financing. whatever that means. But it's an important kaupapa that you bring. It sounds very attractive, and I'm all in, but why doesn't it get taken up? Probably I know the answer, but you go ahead.
First of all, it sounds too good to be true, right? And there's a general ignorance about how the money system works. And we're so used to, I think, using the standard systems, nobody knows that this can be done, even though we've done it in New Zealand before and around the world, actually, it's been done before. So it's a matter of dusting off the cobwebs, I think, and saying, look, here's another mechanism. Why do we need to borrow money from the private sector when we can borrow money from our own reserve bank? It's just a lack of knowledge. Do you have anything to add there, Martin?
Yeah, there's two very, when you raise this issue, you'll get two very common objections. So the first one is a political objection that says if you give the politicians the power to create all this money, they're going to go crazy, and we're going to create hyperinflation, you know, Weimar Republic, Zimbabwe, Argentina, etc. So that is a very common objection. I would say, first of all, in terms of the political culture in New Zealand, I think we've had the opposite problem, particularly in the last 30 or 40 years, that the politicians have actually been too constrained in the issuing of money, and we run down our infrastructure. But the institutional design we're proposing is part and parcel of that. We already solved, if you like, the problem of monetary policy profligacy by politicians by making the Reserve Bank independent to manage the issuing of money through the financial system, and that has operated with cross-party consensus for 30 or 40 years. That is to say, the politicians don't get to direct monetary policy. It's done by the Reserve Bank. We trust them to do it. This one adds a second institution, which is the Infrastructure Commission, to do the same thing on the project planning, management and delivery side. Now, when you bolt those two things together, that you've got independence in planning and delivery in consultation with the councils, and you've got independence once that credit line is issued by Parliament, you know, that $20 billion or whatever it is credit line, you've got independence in the issuing of that financing by the Reserve Bank. You've taken the politicians out of the equation, and the other thing is you've provided long-term certainty, which the infrastructure industry and councils are crying out for. Get us out of this 3-year cycle. Christopher Luxon was saying we need consensus, cross-party consensus. This is cross-party consensus bolted into an institutional framework that we trust to allow the delivery over long periods of time of reliable infrastructure, managing both that political risk of politicians going mad, issuing too much money, and the inflation risk by allowing those institutions to manage the rollout of infrastructure so we don't overtax our physical resources, because that's actually where the inflation takes place. It's the physical resources of people and equipment in local communities who can actually get the job done.
Thank you. I do also just have a quick question, and thank you for the interesting proposal of less cost but more local ownership. As well as thinking about when things are going good, we also need to think about when things go bad. And I do note in this graph, the guarantor with your proposal would be the council's water CCOs individually if there was a case of default, as opposed to councils jointly or ratepayers ultimately on the other side. Can you just explain that a little bit more? Because my understanding is as council-controlled organisations, often if they're not doing well financially themselves, it is the council as a parent body that will have to bail them out or fund them, which of course is ratepayers' money still. Is there a difference between that in terms of security and of not needing ratepayers' money for any
Yeah, there's
cost
a very big
overruns.
difference very big difference in our proposal for that. And Martin, do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so, sorry.
You're on.
Yeah, so the main difference we're proposing, and I think this makes sense if you think of the fact that the money is publicly issued money going into public enterprise, public infrastructure. If, in the event of a default, under our proposal, the remedy is actually a commissioner. If it's private finance, the remedy is typically a receiver or something along those lines. If it's an LGFA privately issued debt, then as well as that, there's also the issue of each of the council shareholders being jointly liable as guarantors across the whole network. So in our proposal, we're suggesting, first of all, that it's a commissioner that goes in. A commissioner, of course, doesn't have a single objective, maximise the money you get for the creditor. A commissioner has the objective of keeping that system going, of recognising community interests as well as financial interests. So that's one benefit. And the second is that a commissioner needs to go into a specific entity, the defaulting entity, right? So again, it doesn't make sense for all of the councils around the country to be guaranteeing that debt when a commissioner is going to go into the specific CCO or council that has defaulted. We also would advocate, and this is part of the institutional design, that the Reserve Bank, just as it does with the banking system, it regulates, that the Reserve Bank also be a light-handed financial regulator that's trying to anticipate problems before they happen, not simply get in when the default has happened. So that's the primary difference.
More community focused.
Thank you very much. It's complex, but it's worth us considering. Thank you. Is there a final question from anyone? Andrew.
Thank you. Could you go back a slide?
Sure.
I'm just curious about, clearly I understand from your answers and your explanation of what work you expect the Infrastructure Commission to do. So that's the hygiene about doing the right projects, making sure the investment's done well and projects are run properly. And I understand what work you're expecting the LGFA to do in terms of not oversupplying money, not driving inflation, etc. You started your comments by saying you've got a concern around the affordability of water services delivery. So if I were to ask you to say, how much of your concern comes from the current system not working on the right, so on the financing part, and how much of your concern comes from the left, the delivery part? Because in the next slide, you've quantified the financing part, how much potential efficiency that is. And I think we all understand that if you get cheaper debt, your cost of your project's lower. That's pretty easy to understand. Curious from you guys what you think the other half of it is, and so what you think the portion of cost opportunity is on the financing side and on the delivery side.
It's a very good question. Yes, we've been focused very much on the finance side, and like you say, if you get cheaper debt, it's going to take the pressure off of rates and water charges. On the left-hand side, the delivery side, we can see some benefits with cooperation and effects on inflation. For example, if the Infrastructure Commission is actually coordinating some of these projects, they're going to have a pool of funds, projects are going to be submitted, it's probably going to be oversubscribed, there's going to be some choices to make. Not all jobs will necessarily be done, but what you will have is a set of jobs and a pipeline of work that the infrastructure providers can rely on ongoing. You won't have individual councils all competing for the services of the same few infrastructure providers, and that will help control inflation. You have something else to add to that, Martin?
Yes, on the other side, when you provide the infrastructure pipeline, delivery pipeline with more certainty, you're also more likely to get investment in people, training and equipment, and that will have both productivity and cost benefits. And if you've got an ability to have, as I say, some light-handed central planning, via the Infrastructure Commission, then if a situation happens where the infrastructure delivery side of the country is on its knees and saying, hey guys, we're losing people, we're closing businesses because we've got a deficiency, then you've got an opportunity under this more fleet of foot and less politically driven system to say, hey, jump in, grab those resources while they're inexpensive and keep them alive so that they're there for when you need them, right? In which case you're actually smoothing out both, you're stopping the peaks, which could be inflationary, but by the same token, you're also plugging the very familiar, as we're living through it, downturns and saying, keep those resources alive. So all of those things would have to, yeah.
Does that answer the question?
Thank you. We have had some other questions. We'll go Mayor Luca and then Mayor Tunui.
Just to follow up on that, would it also not be a benefit to have involved a professional body with real experts in it, so that would that have the effect of limiting exaggerated claims of things? Like, it's very easy to make a big wish list of what we'd want to do in water, and we had one. It was 644 million, and somehow we've got down to 170 million. Now, of course, we've got, you know, a lot of those things could probably be possibly done in better ways, more efficient manners, and some of them deferred and all the rest of it. So maybe that body would be better equipped. Or is that a fair comment or not?
I think it is absolutely a fair comment. You take it out of the politicians' hands who have wish lists, who are trying to impress voters, etc., and you put it back in the hands of people that know infrastructure, and what is a sensible project and what is not. Yeah, good point.
Thank you. And Mayor Tunui.
Thank you, gentlemen, for your presentation today. In our agenda this morning, we actually only had this slide, so I could read what was on it, but really didn't have how things were connected, and that's why the presentation has been incredibly important. It would not be beyond this table to actually look for options that are in the best interests of each of our communities. And I've now seen, as part of your presentation, the second slide, so it explains a little bit more. As each of the mayors and chairs all need to return now back to our political tables, I will return to that statement. It would be good to just have some type of narrative to capture what you've actually verbally presented today. That would be really helpful to bring our teams on board. I just note that actually on the slide that's in front of us now, and that was part of our agenda, there are, in order to be successful, there are really 5 independent parties that it relies on goodwill, appetite, absolute acceptance to be able to take in this proposed system and also accept the responsibility with each of the different roles that have been described. And actually there's been an introduction perhaps of a 6th partner, which is our local government commission, in terms of when things don't quite happen. So also relying on an acceptance that that will be done or undertaken by LGC, Local Government Commission. I just wanted to return possibly to a statement that I heard in the presentation. I think it was from yourself, Cliff, that the repayers are councils, not taxpayers. Was that right? Did we hear that?
That's correct. I was trying to draw the distinction. Normally with government bonds, it's taxpayers that are repaying those. With these bonds, it'd be special water bonds just for water infrastructure, ring fenced strictly for that. So it will be councils paying those. Because of, sorry?
And water users.
And water users,
Yeah. And water users. Thank you for that. I thought I did hear that. In the agenda, Madam Chair, of the 3rd of May, on page 11 of our agenda, there were some comments that were made, key points captured by members, that debt is debt, irrespective of whether it's on or off council's balance sheet, and the payer is the same payer, irrespective of whether it's actually taxpayer or ratepayer or CCO payer, it's still the same payer. So just recognition that however we differentiate or categorise certain aspects, that it actually fundamentally comes down to the same payers, whatever system is used to be able to collect that. Just a note, and I've been hearing it throughout the presentation, take it out of the politicians' hands. Interesting presentation to a table of politicians, be it central or local. I just note that
I realized
Madam
that after
Chair.
I'd said it, but we want to free up local politicians, local councils, communities to look after their own interests, free from the interference of central government, is what I meant.
It's not totally out of the politicians' hands. The politicians that put up the projects along with the councils.
That's right. What we like to say is they've got one job. They've got to pay for it. You guys got to decide what you need to be built.
Thank you, gentlemen. I'd just love to have a summary, please, to share with our local politicians in Kawerau to be able to consider if this is an option in the best interest of our community. Thank you.
We can provide that.
Thank you very much. Mayor Drysdale.
Thank you for your presentation. I think the theory is good. And obviously being able to borrow money at lower rates is always good. I guess my issue I have in that system is you are going through Parliament, you are going through the Infrastructure Commission, which effectively, if I look at that, is very actually similar to the NZTA model. And I think you will see around this table that is a huge frustration to us because we actually lose a lot of the control of our projects and we can't do everything we want to do because of that system. So I guess I'm interested to hear if you've got ideas on how we actually do keep control, because it looks to me we're actually losing a lot of control in that system.
I'll make a comment, then Martin probably has one too. It's all about the design of the governance to make sure that the critical things that are important to the government are satisfied, where councils are not impeded upon to do what you need to do. So I agree, you don't want a model that takes the control out of your hands. You want one that you're empowered to do stuff you want to do.
Sorry, just a follow-up question. Is there a way we can cut out those and we can go directly to the Reserve Bank and borrow money from them?
We believe that could happen and has happened and should happen. For example, the LGFA can go to the Reserve Bank and have issue bonds and have them bought, and during that QE period that Victor mentioned, $4 billion of LGFA bonds were bought by the Reserve Bank, and they're still sitting on their balance sheet. So that is possible. We're also aware that the objections that will be pushed against this are the ones that relate to the possibility of, politicians, and we're talking central government politicians, get carried away and issue too much money, and you need some infrastructure, some sort of institutional framework to make this work. We've thrown out our gambit, but you guys, as the politicians who have to make things work, could well come up with a different framework to satisfy the objections. But yeah, totally, the Reserve Bank could, the government could just say, go fund, and leave the rest of it out of it. That would be simpler. So lobby.
Well, thank you very much, Martin and Cliff. It's been a pleasure to hear your perspective on this and also open our minds a little bit to other options for future. So thank you very much for your presentation today.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
And the Positive Money NZ website's also very interesting and informative as well for anyone that wants to check it out. Thank you. Thank you, guys. So now the next presentation, I will actually be giving a little bit of an update on youth councils. So, Tawna, I might just look at you to flip through the slides. Thank you. And I expect, I'll just whip through this, open to any questions, but I expect we will take a morning tea break by 11 a.m. or sooner. So just as a brief introduction, I am actually a product of youth councils. So I was a member of the youth council in Rotorua, and our youngest ever serving councillor, Councillor Fisher Wang, who was elected when he was 19 years old, was also from the youth council. And over the years of being involved in youth councils at a local and a national level, I have seen many youth councillors go on to take up various leadership roles in their community. So I will declare that I do certainly have an interest in this because I have seen the success in it. But I have also noticed that while the majority of councils across New Zealand choose to pick up the opportunity of a youth council, we still have some councils in the region that do not have a youth council. So I just wanted to give you a brief presentation on what they are, what the values and opportunities are, including the costs, and then just for other councils in the region to consider whether this is something that you wish to take up. And the reason for presenting it now is if you do, it's a great idea to get applications out within the next couple of months to be able to start that for next year. So we'll go to the first slide. So this was actually taken from the review into the future for local government. It's a quote from a rangatahi. It says, "Rangatahi will inherit the impacts of decisions made by councils today. They are passionate about complex issues like climate change, poverty, housing and education, and they want to have their views recognised and have a say on the big issues that will impact their future." So why have a youth council? Young people are involved and empowered. It's leadership and learning. We also do know that we have growing youth populations as well. So I do note the previous presentation that we had was projected growth. Many of us, I know Kawerau certainly the same, we do have growing young populations at the moment. It is a gap for council. Obviously, people can vote when they are 18, and it does mean that anyone under 18 often feels like they are left out unless the council is proactively engaging with them. Youth councils are part of a wider strategy of youth engagement and family-friendly cities. And many councils, as I mentioned, do have won the majority of New Zealand councils, and it has come through as a recommendation from the Future for Local Government review. So I just wanted to share this with you more out of interest. It's something that I found very valuable in the past. This is Roger Hart's ladder of participation. And we often as councils talk about consultation, but this is actually the different levels of participation and consultation. And right at the top, you have Young People's Initiative, where it's decisions made in partnership with adults. So the young people come up with it, and then the adults come along and help. Just below that is Young People's Initiative and Leadership. And then you start getting into it's the adults initiative, but you're allowing young people to also make decisions alongside you. And then you've got adults make decisions. Young people are consulted and informed on what those decisions are. Number 4 is young people are assigned tasks and informed how and why they are involved in a project. And you can see how the participation is starting to go from being empowered to actually more just the consultation. So that's probably about where we're at between 4 and number 3, participation for show. Young people have little or no influence on their activities. And then you get down to the really bad levels of participation, which is decoration. Young people help implement adults' initiatives. And also the worst case would be manipulation. Adults use young people to support their own projects and pretend they are the result of young people's inspiration. So it's just something to consider, because I believe this participation, there's a really big difference between consultation and then actually engaging with the people and allowing them to feel empowered, and also being brave enough to let them take the opportunity to show initiative. And a really good example of this in Rotorua was when we developed our $40 million Rotorua Lakefront playground. And we invited local students in right from the start, and we said, hey, what do you want to see? And they came back with all sorts of ideas: flying foxes, a really, really big slide, basketball courts. And we took that right from the start and then put that into practice, and they actually we delivered exactly what they asked for. So it was at that higher level of participation, and honestly the results for council was much better than if we ourselves were deciding what would be best for young people. So next slide, thank you. So alone, a youth council can't achieve everything. It does make an important contribution to how council engages meaningfully with rangatahi and how we develop and invest in democratic innovations, including participatory and deliberative democracy processes. Next slide, thanks. So how does it work? They are on an annual basis. It's an application process. It was hotly contested last year in Rotorua, and there is a selection process. So often there will be a panel. In our case, it was myself and Councillor Fisher Wang, including staff members. And we usually have groups of youth aged between 12 and 18 years old. More often than not, it's targeted towards the senior leaders in their last 2 years of high school. So most youth councils meet once a month. Some, like I think Kawerau, have been really involved, and I know Rotorua, when they're working on a project, the kids love getting together every single month. There is a cost to youth councils, although it is very minimal. So there is staff support provided. Often this is a staff member that is already existing within council, and it will be just part of their FTE. And also, of course, catering, some juice and some biscuits and pizzas if they're lucky. And also optional is meeting fees. So we went a bit above and beyond in Rotorua, and we give every youth councillor a $50 voucher, which basically honours the fact that they could have spent that 2 hours in paid employment. And there is, of course, an expensive cost of petrol and getting everywhere. So that's what we do. So what are the benefits? It does demonstrate your council's commitment to youth, activate and access the innovative perspectives of youth into council policies and actions, develop capability of our future governors, councillors and local leaders, and connect youth to council activities. There's also career pathways, so our youth don't need to look elsewhere for opportunities. This was a really big one for us, so we make sure that they know that actually there's a variety of different jobs here in your local council. So yep, go away and get your degree if you wish, but please come back home. And also, finally, strengthening the future of our economy. So what's in it for the youth? Because it's actually not about us, it's about them. So civics education, we take that for granted because while there are social studies in schools, it's not very common that they really learn about councils and local government. Also leadership development, meaningful engagement and voice into strategic council decisions. Youth share with council what's actually important to them, and tangible experience that rangatahi can add to their CVs. So that has been incredibly valuable for our young leaders to differentiate themselves when they're going for scholarships and trying to achieve higher leadership roles and even employment later on. Often they will connect with us a few years after and ask for a reference from their time from the Youth Council, and it's been really helpful for them. So it does strengthen employability of rangatahi involved too. So I thought instead of me just telling you they're great, we'll actually ask the youth councillors themselves. So this was actually some feedback from people who have worked alongside youth councillors. So they've said, thanks to our Kawerau Youth Council, we are able to provide more opportunities for our youth. Thank you for putting on the Youth Awards. You do a great job. The Youth Council are very hardworking. They are treasures to the Kawerau community, always helping with community events. We should be very proud we have such great kids. From Whakatane, these are from some of the youth councillors on what was valuable about a youth council. And Charlotte said, meeting with other people with similar ideas and bringing ideas together to make youth visions come to life. Annabelle said, valuable to learn the background of councils and understand how they work. Nate said, learning how to be a leader. And Annabelle said, making connections and gaining more confidence. My Rotorua ones went above and beyond when I asked for a quote, but I will read it. This is from Finley, who's in his final year of high school. The Rotorua Youth Council has been such an awesome opportunity this year. The world of governance is quite hidden from everyday society, particularly youth, so it can be hard for many to understand what goes on behind the scenes. However, the opportunity to be on a youth council this year has given me a brilliant glimpse into the world of decision-making and public policy. I was able to meet many new people, including those of a similar age who share similar interests, friends I may have never met outside of the council. I also had the opportunity to get to know councillors and council staff and join some cool discussions about the layout of a day at work for them. I would 100% recommend anyone and everyone to have a go at a year on Youth Council. It's a perfect experience for any rangatahi who want to learn what it takes to run a city. And then I had one more. Being a part of this, so this is from India May Huron, who's also in her final year of high school. Being a part of the Rotorua Lakes Youth Council for 2024 has truly been an unforgettable experience. The Youth Council has allowed me to gain further insight into the world of governance and public policy. I've been able to grow and strengthen my relationship skills through conversations and working closely with other like-minded youth. The Youth Council has given me a voice. It has enabled me to get involved in projects I care deeply about, such as creating a more accessible Rotorua, and it has helped me confirm what my passion and skills are and how to use them to create a better future for everyone. India does suffer from a physical disability, and I know that in Kawerau they've also had a fantastic youth counsellor who also has a disability. So it is accessible to all, and when they talk about it gives them a voice, it really does. So when we're planning things like parks and reserves, they're able to have their say too. So this is just an example of what we've done for this year, what we've planned out for the Youth Council's activities. So we actually re-established one just recently, so last year in November. We then went out for recruitment early in November. By 8th of January, the applications closed. We had a lot. It was very difficult to pick because they were all fantastic. We completed the recruitment, and then we had a whakatau and actually a pōhiri into the council and an induction on the 29th of January. So that was really special for the kids because we had a full-on pōhiri for them and just acknowledged them and the leadership that they've already demonstrated before getting on youth council. So some of the things that they focused on once they were on board is we had a local government and leadership 101, so a lot of like professional development and training for them. And they also planned for our long-term plan, a youth advisory forum. So they made a great submission to our long-term plan as part of that work. They also were tasked with helping us to develop a youth strategy and also looking at activities for Youth Week. But then we also said, hey, we've got some really key priority areas in council we'd love to have your voice on. So the focus then shifted to getting the input for our inner city revitalisation. On the 24th of June, they fundraised and attended the Festival for the Future. And now the current focus is they're looking at climate change and also environmental. And by the end of this month, they're going to review all of their outputs for the year, prepare a report to council, and then in September will be their final mission for the year, and that will be to present back to our council. So that's just an example of what we're doing and the value that we're getting and giving every single month for them at the Youth Council. So that is a really quick summary of what we are doing. It's really just an opportunity for you to consider it now if you do wish to establish a youth council for next year. I'm happy to take any questions now or happy to provide you any further information later on if you wish. Thank you. Virginia.
That's absolutely. Do you know how many or the proportion of all councils in New Zealand that have youth councils?
Oh, off the top of my head, it will be about 70%. Yeah, it was quite interesting. It was a lot higher than what I expected.
Thank you.
Yeah. No further questions? And I take that as a great presentation then. Look, thank you very much, everyone. Again, if you, Mayor Turnui.
Sorry, I was just looking at His Worship Mayor Drysdale to see who was going to go first. I'll take the gold medal this time, this one and only time probably. Chair, look, I did have a visit from our Youth Projects Officer in Kawerau, and I'm very fortunate to have a 7th-term councillor who was around in 2008 when the Youth Council was established for Kawerau at the time, because of course we want to understand what was it that triggered activation and willingness to be able to explore that. At the time, the government of the day had funding that was only available through council. So there's often the trigger. If that is what we need to have stood up in order to engage in that opportunity for our community. So that was the basis of that. The fact that since 2008 to today, the councillors of our council, those who have gone before us, have continued to support, really with the belief in our rangatira moa pōpō, our leaders of tomorrow, understanding that we leave behind good footprints so that they will one day inherit those, hopefully grow through them, or will find us all in the community and question what on earth were we thinking when we did some things. I also did have a video that the Kawerau Youth Council, it's 4.5 minutes long, team, and I'll invite Tona just to send that out to everybody. That's what our youth council, they didn't prepare that yesterday simply because I was coming to the Mayoral Forum, but it actually just captures in our rangatahi, in their words, what they find beneficial as being part of our youth council. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. And Mayor Luca. Sorry, Mayor Drysdale.
Thank you. Yeah, I was just quite interested. So is it generally that there'd be a 12-month term, and then, you know, do you get people reapplying? So I guess that, you know, having people go on for multiple terms would be quite good for that. I would have thought. But.
Yeah, very good question, actually. Normally it attracts the young people that are in their either final or second to last year of high school. And so naturally the annual cycle just fits in with the fact that some do move on. I know that in some places they allow unlimited, and also in the past it's been 2 maximum. But it's really up to the councils to decide. Yeah, so it is more uncommon for youth councillors do multiple terms, but only because of the age that they normally join. And in places like Hamilton, they have gone as old as 24, which is the Ministry of Youth Development's determination of youth. So that in itself had a lot different sort of structure and purpose, because you had a lot of university students or professionals that provided a different voice as opposed to the school students. Yeah. But it is quite cool because it's one of the only forums that I see where you get representation from all of the different schools in your district. So as you mentioned, that's cool for the young people to make new friends too. Thank you for your question. Mayor Luca.
You're a leader who was a youth councillor at one point. I guess you're not unique. Well, you are unique, but not in that sense. So how do we have any numbers around how many of youth councillors actually end up in real leadership roles? I mean, it's sort of related to Medenia's, but it's probably not something you have, I guess.
No, there actually hasn't been tracking of the progress of youth councillors after, but just from my knowledge, and like I've seen some go into full-time volunteer roles with the Red Cross as an example, go into professional careers. There was a Member of Parliament one as well, so that I suppose when you think the age that you're taking on these young people, it's really an age where they're picking their pathways. And I think especially in my community, when they could pick pathways that aren't so great, it's fantastic to give them even just things like time management skills, and yeah, just general leadership, relationships and networking. It does a whole lot of good for them. Yeah. But it might be worthwhile actually tracking it. And I have had discussions with the Ministry of Youth Development about this as well, and suggested that if we did get more coordinated regionally, then we could potentially be able to do things like that in future.
Thank you.
Chairperson Nees, and then Mayor Turnui.
Thank you. I just want to note that there's different models also for working with youth. So the Bay of Plenty Regional Council doesn't have a youth council because we're quite a distributed organisation, as you can imagine, but we did do a youth strategy, and we do have a group of young people that we invite expressions of interest, and we pull together a group of young people and we use them to undertake participative democracy. So we have a fund, a community fund, and we seek applications for that fund. And we invite, through our participant tool, feedback from around the region, which projects they are supported, but then it's provided to this group of young people who make the final decision on how that funding is allocated and which projects it goes to. So there are different models. It's not one size fits all, I don't believe, but it definitely is working really well for us.
Thank you for that feedback. Mayor Turnui?
Thank you. Just me, Luca, I don't have the numbers, but what we do have in Kawerau is one of our very first councillors of the Kawerau Youth Council from 2008 is a legitimately sworn in member of the council in the 2002 local body elections. in fact was the highest polling. So I'm not saying that it was purely only because of the participation in the Youth Council, but certainly added to that exposure of representation and democracy, as well as the support naturally from your family to be able to come that. But we do have one of our council members. And just an invite, please, to everybody. On Friday, the 6th of September, if you're available, I should know the time. I've just thought that through a little bit longer before I shared that. Our Kauri Youth Council are coordinating the Young Achievers Awards. That's right up there at, I would say, level 8 of the participation ladder, Madam Chair, where that's organised purely by our Kauri Youth Council members, MC'd, organised, from woe to go, right through to the guest speakers, and just the celebration of young people who are engaged at different levels. And we are starting to see a theme of international representation, not quite as much as some in the room, but actually we're very proud it's all the stepping stones towards that higher level representation. Thank you, Chair.
Mayor Luca.
Yeah, it's sort of related to Councillor Nisa's comment. I mean, another mechanism that young people have within councils to get exposure to the council, professional council environment is the holiday internships, which Open Regional Council runs a pretty awesome program, and we didn't manage to do it last year, but we have in the past. I think that's pretty invaluable. It's probably at a more senior level, but you know, it also helps councils in terms of professional development of its own workforce. If people can get in and experience what exactly a council is. I mean, I didn't even know that we had things like graphic artists working in council until I was in there myself. So there's a whole kind of a broad swathe of professionals that can work in councils, and we're helping ourselves if we can, if those programs also. I don't know how many of the councils here have actual internships. You guys do.
Yeah, we do. I just we don't have graphic artists, but no, we do have internships, absolutely, yes.
That's a really good suggestion. We also have summer internships for university students in a number of fields. Last ones were marketing and communications. Engineering is a really big one for us, to get them to come back to Rotorua, and also our museum team, actually.
Yeah, very good.
That appears to be all the questions or feedback. Thank you very much, everyone. It's been a great morning. We've discussed the old, the young, and the money. So, so it's just on 11. We'll take a short break now for. What's the exact time? Oh yeah, it is. Bang on 11. Look at that. Aren't we fantastic? We'll take a short break for 15 minutes, and we'll return at 11:15. Actually, sorry. Just before we do, I'll go into public excluded. Now, can I please just take a mover and a seconder to exclude the public, please? That's moved by Mayor Luca, seconded by Mayor Moore. Thank you very much. All those in favour, please say aye. Thank you. And when we return, we'll come into our public excluded section of the